Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Orbital Rendezvous. Today we have with us Ambassador Bhaskar Balakrishnan. Ambassador Balakrishnan has been India's ambassador to Cuba, to Greece, and he has served in various countries, including quite impressive postings in Vienna and Geneva. Ambassador Balakrishnan's career has been quite interesting. He has finished his PhD in mathematical and theoretical physics from the Stony Brook University in the United States, and thereafter had a 33-year-long illustrious career in the foreign services. He is the author of the book Technology and International Relations, Challenges for the 21st Century, and he right now serves as a science diplomacy fellow, something that is quite, it suits his career trajectory and the experiences that he has gathered in this long career. He brings to us new impressions on science diplomacy, on space diplomacy in this episode. Sir, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here with us. You're the first ambassador to be interviewed at Interstellar. So we are quite lucky to have
the first of many.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Sir, you had a very fantastic career. You switched from sciences to diplomacy, to the foreign services in an era when it was quite rare. And it has impacted your career even to this day. You are one of the most strongest of voices in the science diplomacy circles of India, which is actually a nascent circle as of now. But you saw that potential quite early in your life. Tell us more about how did you take this career?
Well, it was not really a planned thing because I was started off as basically a theoretical physicist. And I did my PhD, as you pointed out, from Stony Brook University, USA in '72. And I decided to come back to India and work in India. So the CSIR had a pool officer system, scientist pool, which gives you a 2-year assignment at a university of your choice. So I took up that. I came back. I was actually teaching in the physics department of Chandigarh, Punjab University. And of course, looking around for something more permanent. But I was aware that this is not going to be easy because coming from outside, coming back from the US as a young PhD, you do not have the kind of mentorship support in India. All my mentors were abroad, and I think you also know. So I had taken a decision that while I will continue to look for a permanent assignment in the teaching higher education, I would also pursue other opportunities. And one of these was the civil services exam, which I took in 1973, and I got selected. I was the number one in the batch. So at '74 I joined. At that time there was no other option for me except this particular one. So I decided to join the Foreign Service and see where the opportunities are for pursuing scientific work. At that time, India had just started off with this nuclear program, nuclear explosion, all that was happening. But it was still, in those days, it was rare for people with scientific background to go into the Foreign Service. Anyway, my first assignment was in Geneva, which was actually very good for me because Geneva at that time had the laboratory called CERN. And then it had many international organizations like WHO and others which were doing scientific related work. So I got the opportunity to, really get into the interface between diplomacy and science. So one of my ambassadors early at that time took him with me to the Committee on Disarmament. And Committee on Disarmament discusses nuclear, chemical, biological, all kinds of weapons. So there's a lot of science in it, how to control these weapons. And then there were a number of UN conferences on science and technology for development. UNCTAD was negotiating a code of conduct for transfer of technology, which also involved a lot of science. So in about 2 years there, I was doing a lot of scientific related work in diplomacy. And I could see that this kind of work is going to increase in the future. Now, thereafter, in all my assignments, I made it a point to interact with the scientific establishments of wherever I was posted. In some countries, not so advanced, some countries advanced. So that took me to Vienna. Vienna has the IEA, it has the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs, and also a fairly active scientific establishment in Austria. In Cuba, which is a small country facing a lot of problems, but they have a very advanced biotechnology sector and the traditional medicine sector. So both these sectors, I actually got to meet with a lot of the scientific community there. Then I came back to Delhi and I was assigned as Joint Secretary dealing with investment and trade promotion. So I recognized the need for technology. So I actually modified the work assignment and made it the Joint Secretary for investment and technology promotion. So in a sense, I was one of the early ones who was handling digital technology, all kinds of technology issues in the MEA.
So this was in the 1990s?
This was in 1999.
90.
And I got appointed to a number of interministerial committees like Genetic Engineering Advisory Committee, Steering Committee on Medical Research of the ICMR. So there was a great opportunity to further enhance this whole activity in science plus diplomacy, as I would call it. So after retirement, I actually embarked on a project of writing a book on which you have mentioned, Science and Technology and International Relations. And that book actually was the start of this new kind of career of science diplomacy. That book had chapters on various scientific domains, but also on science diplomacy as practiced by many countries. And so in the RIS, which is a think tank, they were interested in a program on science diplomacy. So they requested me if I could join them, and I was quite happy to do so. I joined them in 2018, and it's been now about fifth year of this project. We hope that it will continue, it will get extended in the second phase. And that's been my career. I think it was not planned, but I think if you take the opportunities as they come in any career, that is always satisfying. Today, I find that almost 50% of the people who are joining the civil services, whether it's the Foreign Service, the IAS, or others, almost 50% have a science background, whether it's engineering, whether it's IT, whether it's even health and medicine. So I think this is unique to India. No other country has such a high number of scientific background people in joining the civil service. And I think this is something which can be a great asset for us if we use it properly. So, next.
So your last point where you mentioned that there is a heavy demographics within the IFS circles now, which is bending towards diplomacy, which comes with that sort of a background. Has it changed the course of Indian diplomacy? Are we giving enough importance to science and tech? We saw that during the pandemic, where the word vaccine diplomacy came to the fore in a big way, and it affected the public at large. So diplomacy or vaccine diplomacy did not get restricted within the Delhi Central Secretariat area, but it sort of expanded and spread all over the country, all over the world. How do you see science diplomacy? How has it grown in the past few years? And where is the trajectory heading?
No, I think it's definitely grown. Science diplomacy has been around for ages. Long before the word science diplomacy was coined in 2010 by the Americans and the British, they started this whole formalization of science diplomacy. Europeans took it up. We also, we have used science diplomacy, but it has not really been to its full potential. I'll just give you one example. We have DST, Department of Science and Technology, has international collaboration agreements with 80 plus countries, about 84 countries. But out of that, hardly 30 agreements are active. The rest are sort of dormant. And that just shows that there's a lot more work which can be done.
So these are the agreements that our ministers sign whenever they go abroad?
Yes. I mean, the agreements have different backgrounds and histories. They may be formally signed during a visit, but they are always, prepared and negotiated in the years before that, based on the interests of both countries. So these agreements, many of them have not been, activated, so to speak. So that shows that there's a lot more potential in kind of science diplomacy, and it can result in a lot of benefits. For example, it can give our companies a kind of new opportunities to export their technology, export their services, do joint research with other countries. All kinds of things are possible. And there's a huge potential, actually, which remains to be exploited. And I'm very glad that Prime Minister has, during the Voice of the Global South Summit recently, he said that India, he actually gave a call to, the entire government as well as other stakeholders, that he wants India to take its experience in science technology to developing countries. And he specifically mentioned nuclear energy and space. So this is a good sign that at the highest level there is this interest, and I think it'll pick up as we go along.
So we recently had the space and atomic energy sector reforms, which have happened simultaneously. Here at Interstellar, we've been discussing space reforms quite often. We haven't discussed the atomic energy sector reforms. There are attempts now to sort of create an industry value chain which will develop products that are coming out of the atomic energy sector. So be it radioisotopes for medical applications, so on and so forth. You've seen the IAEA very closely, and you've seen India's potential to deliver, civilian applications and civilian products within India. Does it have potential in, let's say, in the global south?
Yes, of course. IAEA has a technical cooperation program, and under that program, our Atomic Energy Department has been pushing its technology-related work, particularly in food irradiation technology, in hydrology, with the use of isotopes for, mapping groundwater and so on. And there's also, of course, the use of isotopes for plant breeding, as well as in medicine. So a lot of these areas, the work is ongoing through the IAEA, Technical Cooperation Program. So IAEA is a kind of the broker between India and the global south. Of course, it's not only India that's doing this. There are other countries. So I think the time has come for, for India to do it more directly. After all, why shouldn't we take the credit for it? If we are going to do technical cooperation, we may as well do it without the help of intermediary, where we have the capacity. So we have now, of course, a major project in Bangladesh, where we are, together with Russia, we are building a power reactor. Reactor technology from India is exportable potentially, but these are high capital investment and require a lot of time to be put up, as we know from our own experience. And our reactors, the Indian design reactors, have many advantages. They don't require enriched uranium. They require heavy water. They can be refueled without being shut down. So a lot of advantages over what the Westerners are, including Russia and France and the US are supplying, which require enriched uranium. So there's a lot of, and then we have a huge amount of expertise in radiation safety and radiation, protection, human resource training of people who are operating nuclear establishments. We have all that capacity. So it's just a, matter of, I think, time before we see all these things going ahead. Of course, in nuclear atomic energy, there are certain issues like proliferation, and the fact that India is not signed up to the NPT for justified reasons, and also CTBT. Although we are given assurances that we will not do a test unless there is some major issue, and we will behave as if we are a responsible party to the NPT. So we've given all those assurances, and those assurances apparently are satisfactory to many countries. So they are dealing with us in civilian nuclear commerce. So that is one area which might have hampered to some extent our external engagement in the atomic energy sector. The fact that we are a unique country in the NPT regime. We are staying out of the NPT, but we respect it. And so that's fairly unique. In the space sector, that doesn't arise. I think there's quite a relatively open regime available for cooperation. I mean, we did have problems over the cryogenic engine and the issue of MTCR. But I think all that is sorted out. And we are now in a position to really go ahead with the space sector engagement with our partners abroad, whether they are developing or whether they are developed. You mentioned about the space sector reforms. I think we're seeing a beginning of these reforms where actually some of the activities, well-established activities of ISRO are being farmed out for the private sector to exploit, so that ISRO can focus more on the more advanced areas of space exploration, space technology. And we probably will see a new space legislation, which is being drafted, coming out quite soon. So I think the opportunities for this, Indian companies and private players in the space sector are going to expand a lot.
So this is a G20 year, and in several engagement groups and working groups, science and technology is one of the central agendas of discussion, themes of discussion. You mentioned that we have not tapped the full potential of science diplomacy or tech diplomacy. And we also get to hear that the diplomatic corps of our country is quite small. We are roughly around 2,000 people or so. But for a pursuit like science and tech diplomacy, you need a wider gamut of people, professionals from various domains, from the life sciences, chemical sciences, physical sciences, so on and so forth. How do we really tap that potential? Is it only through the diplomatic corps, or we will have to open up doors for private sector-led diplomacy?
Yeah, there are many avenues for this, and we see this being practiced by many countries. I see no country can really cover all the scientific domains in its diplomatic services. Impossible. Right. So what many countries do is, and we also do it, we have specialized positions of science counselors in 4 countries. Only 4 countries.
Only 4.
So we recruit them from the scientific establishment within India and for a 3-year term. It's a competitive recruitment, and we appoint them as science counselors. These are people who come from some laboratory or from some scientific department who have an expertise in a certain domain. So they work for about 3 years as science counselors. But we only cover 4 countries. Now, this is a very small network as far as, for a country of our size is concerned. I'm sure DST is planning to expand this network to maybe 15 or so. It will take some time. But in the meantime...
so where are these 4? Are they all in the global north?
They are all in the global north. One is in Germany, one is Japan, one is Russia, and the other is in USA. So there are 4 of them. But of course, this approach has limitations. You cannot have them everywhere. Secondly, to get a distinguished or a very experienced scientist out of his lab to go and work as a science counselor for 3 years, many people will find that not so good for their career. And this has happened in the US also. They also have the same problem. So I think what we will have to do is we will have to manage with the existing personnel whom we have, give them a little additional training to equip them as a role of a science counselor. Just as we do now, we don't have commercial officer posts from the Commerce Ministry in all places. We have them in about 20 places. But the rest of the countries, we are servicing them through our own regular officers who are given a special training on economic diplomacy. So they are given training on how to go about promoting exports, how to go about helping resolve trade disputes, how to help with trade exhibitions, how to help our companies participate in tenders and so on. So all that stuff is there. So similar kind of training can be given to our diplomats to enable them to perform the role of science counselors. So that is another thing which can be done while we, of course, expand our network. The Americans have a lot of different schemes. What they do is for particular domains, they recruit a special kind of ambassador. For example, a special ambassador for oceans or climate change. So he sort of goes around to different countries and tries to help his country to build collaboration in those fields. So that is, a cross-country kind of domain-specific system. The UK has a science information network which is totally outside the FCO. It's an independent private network, and it is run as a commercial entity. Swiss have something called SwissNex, which is it is not a bureaucratic thing. It is outside and it is they raise their money and so on through various other sources. So there are different models out there. I think we are still in the process of feeling our way there, and I was hopeful that this project, one of the results of this will be more clarity on how to go about Indian science diplomacy, given the challenges and the opportunities which we are facing. We also need to think of another factor, and that is our indicators on science and technology are not one of the best. We are at the level of spending only 0.7% of GDP on R&D, which is far too low. I mean, the countries like the highest is South Korea, which is over 4%. And the benchmark, which should be the correct one, is around 2 to 3%. Second factor is the number of our researchers per million population. That's still very low. So this goes together. If you spend more on R&D, create more research infrastructure, labs, then you will have more people working instead of going out to other countries looking for jobs. Of course, our record on publications is not bad. I mean, we do publish, and we, in terms of application for patents also, we are better than what would expect. But I think we need to improve more money for R&D, more research infrastructure building, more research at higher education institutions by our students and faculty. Once we do these three things in an organized way, and this should be part of the new science policy, which is likely to come out, I think we'll see a big improvement.
You started by saying that India is assumed the position of voice of the global south. And while we say that, we do not have science representatives in the global south countries. You mentioned just 4 in the global north. So what should be the next steps? Which are the areas? Is space one of the areas for us to offer space tech or space-based services, let's say to African countries or Latin American countries? And how should we proceed in that manner?
Well, space is not that well known. Everybody knows about Indian vaccines, pharmaceuticals, and Indian medical services at our hospitals. So there we do attract foreign patients coming to India. People want our vaccines and drugs. Space sector, first of all, we need to promote what exactly we have and how we have used it in India. Now, India is a wonderful laboratory. We have all kinds of conditions. Anything you find elsewhere in the world, you will find somewhere in India, the similar situation. So we've got to take all the things we have done in different situations in India, sort of package them and promote that. And that's something which I think now the space reforms will unlock this. For example, agriculture, the whole idea of using space, remote sensing to map crops and all that, water resource management, communications, obviously that's the low fruit. Satellite communications can be very, very useful and effective. Meteorology, weather and things, then so this whole, there's a wide range of satellite, space-based applications which are there. Countries want to launch their own satellite for whatever reasons, so they don't have the means to launch it or to build a satellite. Well, there are many countries which, we can offer services to build satellites for them, train their people how to use it and launch it, and also set up ground stations where their people can make use of the satellite data. So it is quite a wide area of possibilities there. It's a matter of how we package and promote what we can offer.
So finally, my last question would be, tell us something about the Forum for Indian Science Diplomacy, and how do you foresee it growing in the next few years?
Well, we set up this as a kind of vehicle for RIS's science diplomacy program, which was funded by DST. But we knew that this is only going to be the initial startup. We are a kind of startup funded by DST for 3 years. So we wanted something more long term. So we set up this forum for Indian science diplomacy. That under that forum, we carry out number of activities, which we will continue to do so. One is publishing an international journal called Science Diplomacy Review. The other is organizing every month, science, technology, innovation lectures for the general audience. So we get a lot of leading experts to talk about different things. And we've now found that the online mode is very, very effective because the attendance for these lectures online is very good. And we also have a fortnightly science diplomacy alert. Then we have occasional papers we put out and seminars and publications. And we also are training batches of 30 people from developing countries who come here for our science diplomacy program, for a 2-week training program. Because of COVID, we couldn't do it for the last 2 years. Now in January next year, we'll resume it. So I think this is the only science diplomacy focused program in the country. And perhaps even in the global south, this is not probably fairly unique. So we are getting a lot of, interest from outside India in our program and activities. They often ask for us to participate in their lectures, events. We, of course, have established a network with similar science diplomacy outfits in Europe, US and other countries. So I think this Forum for Indian Science Diplomacy was meant to serve this purpose as a kind of long-term platform for Indian science diplomacy. So that's how we look at it. And we are hopeful that our next project will get approved soon and we'll be able to build on what we have.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. It was lovely to have you with us. This is the first time that you are coming here. And we hope that we'll have much more discussion on science diplomacy and the nitty-gritties of it. Maybe we'll go into the atomic sector, the space sector, the biotech sector one by one, and bring to the fore the minutiae of it and the challenges and the careers that lie ahead. Most of us audience is young and they would want to know about the opportunities that lie ahead in these domains.
Yeah, I think the young people, they are here at a wonderful time in India's, and the time is so good. India is on the threshold of a new kind of jump into the future, and they're here at the right time.
Yeah. So with that, we close today's episode. Do like, share and subscribe to our channel for such wonderful content that we bring to you. Thank you.
In space exploration.